William Butler Yeats was a charismatic individual whose influence on the world and his interest in the world extended far beyond his poetry. In fact, it has been said that you could study Yeats in great detail without even picking up one of his poems. He was a significant political figure, a key player in Irish theatre, and a man with a deep personal interest in spiritual truth. Yeats was a spokesperson for Irish national identity. He was also intensely proud of his English heritage. In poetry, he was motivated initially by providing a voice and a forum for the mythical tales he had grown up with. Increasingly, his work became more personal, passionate, and less duty-based. Yeats's personal context can be examined briefly in a few categories: his family and background, the ladies in his life, and his sense of loss. Yeats was born in Dublin and spent time growing up there, as well as in London and in Sligo County, Ireland. His father was himself a renowned painter, and his siblings also pursued the arts. Considered quite the looker in his day, and with a strong sense of national identity and a love of literature, Yeats is someone we can imagine as attracting a strong amount of interest from the young ladies of Sligo County. Something of a Justin Timberlake of years gone by. However, one of the three key women in his life, Maud Gonne, provided a relationship which was characterised by rejection. 2 years after meeting the 23-year-old passionate Irish nationalist and outspoken Gonne, Yeats proposed marriage and was rejected. He tried his luck again some 9 years later, as well as the following year and the following year after that, being rejected 4 times in total by 1901. Gonne has the honour of inspiring and being the subject of a great amount of poetry of one of the great writers in English history. In the 14 years between meeting Gonne and her marrying another Irishman, Yeats is believed to have only had romantic interest in one other woman, Olivia Shakespeare, who is actually the great-great-granddaughter of... No, not really. It was a bit like Smith in those days. After Gonne had separated from her husband, her and Yeats finally consummated their interesting relationship, some 19 years after they had initially met. Most of Yeats's poems about a beloved figure are about Gonne. Yeats eventually married Georgie Hyde Lees at the age of 52. They had 2 children, Anne and Michael. Hyde Lees and Yeats connected on their intense interest in the spiritual world. Their spiritual search took them beyond the bounds of a particular religion, but they maintained a strong interest in the occult and in communicating with a spiritual dimension. It was an area Yeats had retained a fascination with since childhood. More on that later. Lady Gregory was another significant player in Yeats's life. Together they played a major role in the revival of Irish theatre. Again, it's worth noting Yeats's contribution to society was not limited to his poetic work. With the financial assistance of Lady Gregory, they set up the Abbey Theatre, where Yeats wrote plays, including 2 of the plays performed on the theatre's opening night. Lady Gregory adopted the phrase, "to think like a wise man, but to express oneself like the common people," as a motto, and this rings true to Yeats' work too. Then, of course, there is Yeats's mother, Susan Pollexfen. She can be thanked for her contribution to Yeats's poetry by capturing his imagination with stories and Irish folk tales. These stories... That cow has 2 heads! These stories, coupled with the landscape of Sligo County in Ireland, where his mother's family lived, and where Yeats largely grew up, provided Yeats with his proud sense of Irish history and folklore. Yeats's life was somewhat characterised by loss, and this punctuates much of his poetry. He grew up when a loss of faith was widespread, as Protestant influences from England clashed with Irish Catholic traditions. The violence as Ireland confronted England caused a great loss of many young Irish men,
Yeats's love for Maud Gonne was a story of loss. She chose an Irish patriot over Yeats and committed her life to him, not Yeats. John McBride was killed in the 1916 Easter week battles with England. Yeats's ongoing loss of Gonne was devastating, and their brief reconnection after McBride's death was just that, brief. Further, thousands of Irish had left the country due to famine in the earlier part of the century. And finally, the political and economic rule of landowners at the time had been dismantled after severe disputes between landowners and tenant farmers. Yeats's poetry seeked to compensate for these losses while also acknowledging that suffering.
On spirituality, Yeats had a grandfather and a great-grandfather who were in the clergy. That's not actually them. His father, however, rebelled against his family's Christianity. So where did this leave William Butler Yeats? He is often referred to as a mystic. Yeats was quite set on not rejecting the notion of religion blankly like his father. In fact, you could say he rebelled against his father's rebellion. James Lovick Allen describes him as anything but an orthodox Christian. He was a devoutly religious man. Yeats's spiritual journey is best described as a search for truth. This included studying in depth many of the world religions and spending many years experimenting with occult practices such as automatic writing and communicating with spirits. Yeats was always firm in his belief in a spiritual world. One of the English language's other great thinkers has some wisdom that shares a similar line of thought to some of Yeats's ideas.
Anything that we're describing through science, we're describing through the prism of the 5 limited senses. Our eyes can only see between infrared light and ultraviolet light. There's light bouncing around everywhere. Our ears can only hear a tiny decibel range, can't hear the noise of a dog whistle, can't hear any high-pitched frequency sounds. Isn't it likely then that there are other vibrations, frequencies, energies, consciousness moving through the universe?
Like our man Russell Brand there, Yeats believed there was more than what was visible and audible, and a lot of Yeats's life was dedicated to seeking knowledge of that spiritual realm. Yeats spent a life seeking reality. His concerning himself with alchemy, magic, spiritism, etc. was a desire to ascertain reality rather than a temptation to engage some sort of forbidden. His worldview includes a particular view on the structure of time. His writing, including his poetry, refers to gyres, cycles of time which repeat in some way in periods of 1,000 to 4,000 years. A mystic, a seeker of truth, a man of passion for his country and its heritage, Yeats gave and gave to Ireland and to the English language. And he was a brilliant poet as well.